Today, Mr. Ryan joins us for another episode, so he can.
Ryan.
all right, sorry.
No, okay.
All right, today we're joined by Professor Ryan, and he's joined us today for a special episode where he's going to break down control theory by popular demand. Let's just jump straight into control theory. So break down what control theory is for me and why people should be concerned about it, or whether they shouldn't be concerned about it, or who should be concerned about it.
So, control theory comes from the idea of elite theory. It's an Italian theory from the 1920s.
Right.
And the idea is that the organised minority will always control the disorganised majority.
Right.
So the question we're asking in a previous podcast was to do with if AI will just supersede everybody's jobs and they'll become like homeless, have nothing to do.
Right.
Or will they kind of work in and become higher value workers?
Right.
I'm not sure that's people are capable of that, or there's enough jobs for them, right? So that's the concern. Obviously, population's increasing.
Yeah.
And then we went back to like the old days in the Industrial Revolution, where we were promised to have less working hours and more freedom
Right.
because of the innovations in like the internet and whatnot.
Right.
And then we saw that actually people work more people work as women enter the workforce, like more people are working.
Right.
They're working longer hours, they're more stressed. And they have like more things to do, even though the promise was always, once we get these industrial revolution and telecommunication advancements through, we would have time to do value-added things in like community building and all that kind of stuff. So the idea was maybe these jobs are actually a way of controlling people rather than actually being productive members. It also kind of goes into like David Graeber's theory of bullshit jobs.
Okay.
Where it's like the jobs are fake and they're kind of there to exhaust you mentally and physically so you can't revolt against the system.
Interesting.
But to be fair, I was just saying that like this was just like a thing that I said once randomly, and then it became called control theory. I don't think I even used the term.
But now you got to double down.
Now I got to double down.
Now it's a
Yeah.
thing, right?
Now it's like I invented control theory now.
But like, so you reckon, even though logically, right, there's a case to be made that there's less work to do, therefore we have more time.
Yes.
There's a force sort of like ensuring, or that has an interest in keeping us busy.
Busy doing mundane things that are deviating, they're diverting us from doing things which would affect them, the elites, the people that, you know, run society. They pull the strings, they socially engineer.
So the reason we're keeping us busy is so that we don't have enough space and time.
Yeah, like, you know, you're busy after like a fucking 8-hour workday. You don't want to come home and, you know, all these revolutionaries throughout history, they don't have a part-time job. That's their job. They're professional revolutionaries. They're not like doing it on the side. It's like a full-time gig, undermining state structures. You know what I mean?
Okay, I see.
They need to build networks which compete with the managerial state, which are, by definition, the most complex and elite networks that exist already. So they need to basically have their shit switched on. They can't be doing it as part, like the revolutionaries. People that think there's a better way of doing things other than the, you know, the neoliberal structure or the feudal structure.
Yeah.
When they initiate a revolt, they can't be half-assed. They can't be like tired from, you know, their job and come back and do revolutionary work part-time.
Right.
So if you just exhaust people with mundane nonsense tasks and then also give them their little pittance, which is becoming increasingly small in Australia because everybody's poorer and poorer as the house prices go up, inflation goes up, petrol prices go up, the wages aren't really going up, and they can also take it away from you. If you go too radical, they can say, this guy's persona non grata, don't employ him, socially ostracized. So it's like, I don't know if these jobs are designed to actually be productive. Yeah. Obviously some of them are.
Yeah. But what's more effective as a distraction though? Like an appealing job or like a bullshit job?
I don't know. What do you think?
Like, so imagine if like, there's a potential revolutionary, right?
Yes.
So like simplistically, there's this guy who could become a potential revolutionary and like screw up the whole system. And now you're gonna like give him, your task is to distract him. Would you get him to like just like do an actual bullshit job where it's like no real value or like boring and just tires him out? Or would you prefer he be sort of like into his job and motivated, and for him to rise up the ranks his whole life?
Maybe motivated, yeah. Or maybe it's like he's, maybe motivated. I don't think it matters too much. I think he's just exhausted doing either one because they're both like, they both create like oxidative stress, and you become tired. Even if you're doing a bullshit job that you know is bullshit, you get paid well and you're happy and stuff.
Yeah.
There's still like some kind of weird stress that happens about just having a job.
Right.
Like if you're on holidays, you're not stressed.
Yep.
But even if you're
Yep.
like faking your work and stuff like that, there's
Yeah.
still a stress that's associated with it.
Well,
What if they find out?
I would say that's stress related to deception.
Oh, potentially.
I reckon.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because on a side note, my job is very chill now. But I think if my manager would ask me, I just tell him I'm just being very chill. Then that's not tiring.
No.
Yeah.
What if he's like, be less chill, otherwise we're gonna get rid of you? Would that stress you?
It stressed me, but then like, it would stress me to the point, if it got to the point where I felt like I'd have to be managing like different stories on a regular basis. But if like, it might, yeah, you know what I mean? Because then you sort of like, on the hardcore and you get like mouse clickers and then or you like, all that kind of thing to pretend you're working.
Yeah.
So that will be, I reckon that will be stressful because you're I don't know.
It's like
you're lying.
decision-making
Pretty much,
fatigue.
well, pretty much because you're lying.
It's identity fatigue. You're pretending that you're a certain thing and you're not, right?
Yeah, and it sort of go against some of my values as well, which is stressful.
Yeah,
Right?
that's potential.
Right?
Yeah, that's potentially true.
But anyway, from the perspective of control theory, right?
Talk about this as if like I'm an expert on control theory.
No, I'm just saying, right?
It's like I'm the preeminent expert.
I just want to ask a question,
Yeah, of
right?
course. He's asking
so,
questions.
from the perspective of control theory,
Yeah, of course.
right? What happens when like an individual is like completely useless?
Well, I think
Is that possible?
Yeah. I was talking to my mate just then about
Yeah.
that, right? So like,
But I reckon they can't be completely useless.
No, 'cause if you're completely useless,
because you can become revolutionary, right?
correct,
Like,
because it's
you're like the opposite of
But the
useless.
thing is, there's two kind of revolutionaries, right? There's the revolutions that come from the top, from
Yeah.
like a dispossessed, almost upper class person, like a Napoleon or a Lenin, where they're
Yeah.
like they're elite upper class people.
Yeah.
But they're not quite in the hyper elite. They're kind of forgotten about people.
Yeah.
And they resent the elites because they're
Right.
not quite as good as them.
Yeah.
In their own status. Maybe like a Che Guevara's like that, Doctor, Osama bin Laden's like that. But then there's also revolutionaries or revolutions that come from, it appears,
Like the working
ground.
class. Yeah,
So
right,
like, like the French Revolution. It's
Right.
like people have no food. So it would be interesting to see what would happen, for example, if you had
Which one's Martin Luther King? He's from
Martin
the
Luther
top or
King,
from the
I think
bottom?
it was from the top.
Okay.
But I think it was presented as a bottom-up revolution,
Right,
but I think it was
right.
actually astroturfed from above in order to create a change in American society that the elites thought was necessary at the
Right,
time. So
okay.
they wanted to end the perception that America was a racist country because they wanted to compete with the Soviets,
Right.
and the Soviets were communist, and they were perceived as being anti-racist.
Right.
Because communism is like an anti-racist philosophy, while America still had like segregation.
Right.
We had it in Australia,
Okay.
but they wanted to destroy that. So I think it was actually unpopular, but the elites thought it was necessary to do in order to win the approval of third world countries that
Right.
became necessary in a proxy Cold War. Like they had certain countries like influence in various countries. That Latin America would turn communist, and they need to market their own brand of freedom and liberalism. But then the Soviets are saying, no, these guys. Why would you like these guys? They're racist. Look at the fact that in America they segregate schools. That's
Well, so
very
the
difficult.
Soviets were onto that.
Yeah, of course. I was saying that America's a
Alright.
racist empire.
Like, how would that look? Like, who are they saying it to? Their own people?
No, they were saying it's like African countries, like Angola. There was like yeah, because like basically
Alright. Yeah.
after the Second World War,
Yeah.
America and Russia split the world in two, right?
Yeah.
And like in Africa, they were trying.
They're going around like doing sales.
They were basically doing sales,
Yeah.
and like they'll go to Angola, and the Soviets are like, by the way, you guys should become communists.
Yeah.
And they go, why should we become communists? That's
Yeah.
crazy. Maybe we'll have a famine and have problems. And they go, well, at least we're not anti-Negro racist. And they go, come again? And they go, yeah, like you don't know, in America, in 1960s, like in the 1950s and 60s, Muhammad Ali came back from the Olympics in 1960 and apparently couldn't eat in a restaurant with white people in Kentucky,
Right.
in Louisville, I think it was.
Right.
So like, that was a real thing. So I think America wanted to change its marketing strategy
Right.
to the third world by saying, hey guys, listen, that Soviet line that we're racist, it's no longer true. Look at Martin Luther King. Look at the Civil Rights Act.
But when you put it that way, it sounds like it's like just a marketing strategy. It sort of feels like you take the passion out of like the people who are like were said to have been
Well,
passionate about
yeah,
it.
I mean, like, I think if you
When
know how the
people-
sausage is made, the passion always gets out of it. Like, yeah, of course.
But do you reckon?
No, I think we're socially engineered. I think there's no passion in any of it. I think it's all socially engineered from above.
But then that might be a condition for passion.
Oh,
too.
potentially on the ground. You're like, I think
That would
Martin
be,
Luther King
right?
might have been a
Yeah.
real guy that they
Yeah.
picked out of obscurity and
Yeah.
said, hey guy, run with it.
Right.
It's your project. We can't do it because we're passionalist
Yeah.
social engineers.
Right.
We can't do shit. We just know what we want to achieve.
Right.
We have to get the real guy
Yeah.
to do that because
Yeah.
he's going to speak with candor, and then we kind of, well, they end up killing him, didn't they? According to some conspiracy theories. Not sure how true that is.
Interesting. So is there like an equivalent or like some kind of like passionless sort of like engineering happening in Australia?
Today,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a bunch of them. I'm not sure they're safe for this podcast,
Oh,
but like there's be a bunch of them, yeah.
Are there any that are safe, that are sort of like day to day relevant, that are going to be interesting to how like I see the world or like my day to day life? Because that sounds like abstract sort of
Yeah,
like history.
yeah.
Right?
So
So
I
what-
think of one that would be PG-13.
Okay, because like the interesting point so far was like I thought if we become useless, we're useless. But then the interesting perspective from control theory so far was like we're useless from our perspective, but you're saying potentially someone thinks we're dangerous because we're useless. Well, I didn't know.
Well, think
That's
about this,
interesting.
right? Like,
That's
you know how,
interesting.
like, in your mind, you wake up, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Sam Harris thing where you have a body, but you're like
Yeah.
a person in your head, right?
Yeah.
And you wake up, and you know how, like, you
Yeah.
have a perception
Yeah.
that you're the main character in your own story,
Yes.
and, like, I'm number one. It's like, okay, like,
Yes.
if I have to eat or someone else has to eat, it's me, unfortunately, but I'll try to help him, that kind of thing, right? That's a very human thing.
It's like a fair assumption.
It's a fair assumption that people make. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And also,
no,
it's
no,
like,
I was gonna say that's a fair assumption that everyone's assuming that.
okay, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. And it's like, you know, you wake up and if I'm sick, I care more about me being sick than someone else being sick. Even though if someone else tells me they're
Yeah.
sick, I might be
Yeah.
bad, I might feel bad.
Yeah. Unless you're like hyper rational, but
Yeah.
those are outliers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Okay.
that's how, imagine you have a useless person who can't keep up with AI. Useless, right? I don't think he's useless, but maybe he's perceived as being useless economically, right?
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. Like
I'm
from the
saying,
market.
of course,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Not in terms of social value, right?
Yeah.
Useless economically. Imagine he loses his job, now he can't get a job and he has difficulty making
Yeah.
money, attracting female mates,
Yeah.
having friends because he has low status, right? Imagine that. He still wakes up every morning with the perception that I'm invaluable because he is valuable to himself. So he still wants to, he still needs food. He still, why wouldn't he do what's necessary to get those things? It's not like
So he's going to get radicalized
yeah,
one,
of
way,
course.
one way or the other.
Of course, he's not going to
right.
wake up and say, actually, all right, just because, you know.
Well, the people who might, right? Is that true?
Well, of course. I mean, that's why you see a lot of depressed people lash out and do crazy shit, right?
Are they more useless than? They're probably more useless from that perspective than the revolutionaries, though. Like you're saying, like those people aren't dangerous, right?
Who? Just a depressed person?
Yeah.
I
Or
don't-
even if they do like one violent act, they're
No,
not
no,
useless.
no.
They're not-
The system knows how to deal with
Yeah,
violence.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
what they don't like is like
An inspirational-
an ongoing symbolic threat.
Yeah, right.
Like it's not about violence. Like they don't care if people kill each other and stuff
Right.
like that. Like they've seen that for hundreds of years.
Right.
They've got structures that will deal with that. Policing and stuff, that's
Mm-hmm. Right.
not going to go anywhere. In fact, it's going to become more draconian.
A cultural
as-
revolution is dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Right,
Like
okay.
even like, for example, even the threat, even people talking and getting too much attention to an idea without violence, they would perceive as being more dangerous than actual violent acts.
Wait, say that again.
Like for example, like someone who is, imagine someone comes out and says we have a massive migrant problem, or
Right.
housing cost is too ridiculous.
If they do it, but then they look calm, they're more dangerous.
They're more dangerous, and
Yeah.
also if they're getting a massive audience,
Then they're very-
the
then they're
system
very
regards
dangerous.
them as being more dangerous than actual violent terrorists. They would regard them as more
But it's
dangerous.
almost logical when you put it that way.
It makes sense, right?
Right.
Like it makes sense. But the people that have been left behind by the system of technology and AI,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine they would just accept the fact that they're the losers and therefore they don't get to eat. But then they might get a universal basic income, etc. They might do that in order to sustain the technology because it's necessary to get. That's like the new form of distraction. Is they get AI porn, they get Netflix subscriptions for free, they get universal basic income, and then they just
Yeah.
become like slobs on a mattress
Okay.
who never leave their house, and they get like maybe they might even like do things to make them want to commit suicide and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've seen something in Canada where they're trying to make people commit suicide. It could get dark.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna probably get dark if if large volumes of people are actually made useless from that first point of view, because that's already dark.
That could be dark, yeah. I mean, it's just like it's a changing society.
That's already dark if they're gonna accept it. You know how you're saying they're not gonna accept it?
Yes.
It's already like both scenarios of them being useless in the first place is very dark.
It could be dark, yeah. So
If there's no revolutionaries or no
Yeah.
even no control theory, it's already very dark.
yeah, like
I don't know if control theory makes it darker or brighter.
I was thinking to myself that the reason these ideas came up was because I was reading about the history of like the famine in China.
Right.
Right, in 1958 there was a thing called the Great Leap Forward.
Yeah.
Mao collectivizes agriculture and I think like
Yeah.
steel making.
Yeah.
And I think there's also some kind of there's a famine and then there's a crop yield problem and then there's a huge famine and 30 million people die.
Right.
That's like the population of Australia all starving to death. And I was asking ChatGPT, when you say starved to death, do you mean that they literally had 2 months of no food? And it was kind of like being like, yes, in many cases it meant
Yeah,
that, but sometimes
yeah.
it means like not having enough food to be healthy and they get taken out by diseases, right?
Right. Okay.
But it's bad.
Yeah.
30 million people, like it's unimaginable carnage by the modern standards, right? So the question is,
And they're all forgotten.
they're all forgotten, nobody
Yeah.
cares, like it's pretty fucking wild, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't they revolt? Like, imagine you're a week without food, you see no prospect of food in the future. Were they being socially engineered, saying, actually, the food's going to come, guys, and it never came? Because if you're going to manufacture a famine like that, if you give people no out and say, hey, guys, the food's
Yeah.
never
Based on
coming,
your theory, they would revolt. Therefore,
Yes.
they should have been given
that-
bullshit
it
jobs.
but what they might have done is be like, hey, guys, the food's going to come in a week, and then they're too tired in a week to revolt, and they accept their fate. I don't know how this occurred in history. I'm going to have to do some more deep diving and research.
Yeah.
But like, for example, right, in Australia, I know a lot of people that steal food from Woolies and Coles.
Yeah.
Just steal, right? And that's because of like a 50% inflation.
Do you
Yeah.
think so?
Yeah, I mean,
So
like,
you reckon if the inflation didn't come, they would not have stole, or they?
and I think it's hugely determinant on inflation. I've seen more people talk about it openly now that there's huge inflationary pressure. People talk about it, like I know people that like take pride in it.
Maybe they started it because of that, but then like if they
justifying it.
knew how easy it was, or they knew how easy it was now that they had done it before, even without the inflation, they might have still been trying to do it to save money, right?
Potentially.
If you're going to do that.
But like what I was thinking to myself is, in Weimar Republic after World War I in Germany, right? They apparently had like unimaginable, 10,000% inflation rates. Why wouldn't everybody steal? Imagine like you walk into Coles and the price of bread is like $10,000. Wouldn't you just walk in and like take it at gunpoint? Like there's a certain point where people wouldn't pay for stuff.
Yeah. No, but then so what's the answer though? Because you're.
Well, my answer that kind of contradicts control theory.
Exactly.
That's why I'm thinking about it, and that's why it's just a hypothesis I'm just working through.
I see.
Like this is not. I don't know. Maybe fate and just die. Maybe people just die.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. I want to thank you for joining us tonight and explaining in depth your thoughts and how you're thinking about society from the lens of control theory.
Mm-hmm. In the comments, guys, tell me what you think about control theory.
All right, catch you guys later. See you in the flip side.